Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and this time we're talking about when we could see the next Nintendo Direct. It is the beginning of 2021, hopefully a year that we expect to be a much better year than 2020. 2020, while it had some good points, definitely was a struggle for many of us, and even for Nintendo, while they did sell really well in 2020, their software output compared to previous years was a little lackluster. But going into 2021, there's a lot of belief that the year will be a lot stronger. There's a lot of anniversaries coming up, such as Zelda's anniversary, Pokemon's anniversary, Donkey Kong's 40th anniversary, and even Metroid's 35th anniversary. Now, I bring that up not to say that I expect to see some sort of big anniversary direct for each particular franchise I just mentioned, but there's likely going to be a few game releases related to some of those anniversaries. But on top of that, there's a lot of rumors and signs perhaps suggesting that some sort of Switch revision or even two Switch revisions will be coming out in 2021 as well. And then on top of all of that, when you take a look at the big Nintendo development teams that came out with games in 2017, and you look at what they've done since, well, it hasn't been much. Suggesting that they've all been working on pretty big games, and now going into 2021, it's been about 4 years, it might be about time to start to see some of them. We could be entering the actual peak year for the Nintendo Switch, that second wave, that second generation of big ground-up Nintendo Switch games. And that's basically a summary of why a lot of people like myself think 2021 is going to be a really big year. But if it's going to be a big year, Nintendo needs to start announcing some of these big games, some of these exciting products. They're likely going to do it in some sort of Nintendo Switch presentation. That's what they've done in the past. Maybe there'll be some trailer drops instead, but there's a decent chance we could be seeing some directs as well. So that's what we'll be focusing on today, what Nintendo may be doing in early 2021 with the Nintendo Direct. Now before we jump into things, let me quickly talk about my social media. There is a Twitter page, a Discord community, a Patreon page, and a Twitch channel. If you are interested in any of that, check it all out, it's linked in the description below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here, subscribe. Alright, so as I noted earlier, there's a possibility that we won't be seeing a whole bunch of big general Nintendo Directs throughout 2021, because we didn't really see that in 2020. It was a lot of partner showcases, there was one Direct Mini, and there was some game-specific or franchise-specific Directs, and then the rest were just trailer drops throughout the year. But 2020 was a very unique situation. That's when the pandemic broke out. Nintendo had to take a step back, reassess how they would share their information about their games to us, and what we got in 2020 was their solution, at least for the time being. But going to 2021, the vaccine is being sent out. We are getting closer and closer to some regularity. We're not there yet, but things are improving. Things are starting to look somewhat promising. So with that in mind, and with the past months and how the gaming industry has sort of adapted to the situation, there is some optimism that Nintendo will start to go back to somewhat of a norm. It may not happen in the beginning of the year. We may have to wait a little bit longer, but it does seem like we are getting closer to seeing some sort of Nintendo Direct. And in my opinion, I do think we will see the return of the big general Nintendo Direct in 2021. We didn't see it in 2020 at all. The last one we got was September 2019. I do think that will return, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen in the beginning of the year. So let's actually go ahead and take a look at the Nintendo Direct archive and see what Nintendo has done over the last few years of the Nintendo Switch in the beginning months of every particular year. So looking at the beginning of 2020, we had the Nintendo Direct Mini, and that included Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. But going back into February, we had an Animal Crossing New Horizons Direct. There, they basically just focused on Animal Crossing because the game was about to come out. And then in January, we had a Pokemon Nintendo Direct, and in there, they revealed Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, the remake, and also gave us more information, or at least the first trailer, for Pokemon Sword and Shield's DLC. But then going into 2018, in March, we had a major Nintendo Direct, and in there, they revealed Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. They showed other things like Splatoon 2 DLC. But then to start off the year for 2018, we had a Direct Mini, and in there, they revealed Dark Souls Remastered, a pretty big third-party release on the Nintendo Switch. But then let's go to 2017. 2017 was an amazing year. An incredible year. We saw the likes of ARMS. We saw the likes of Splatoon 2. We saw Breath of the Wild. We saw Super Mario Odyssey. We saw Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. We saw Xenoblade Chronicles 2. It was a very huge year, but we didn't see anything in January, February, or March in terms of Nintendo Direct, save for a Fire Emblem Direct, which didn't really have much for the Switch, but Fire Emblem Warriors, which is a Musou-style Fire Emblem game. There was no particular Direct to start off 2017. The earliest one we got that focused on a number of things was in April, which is still relatively early in the year. The Switch did come out in March. What I haven't mentioned yet is that while there wasn't a Direct, there was a huge Nintendo Switch presentation where they revealed a whole bunch of things, including ARMS, Splatoon 2, Super Mario Odyssey, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and they showed off what I think is arguably the best trailer for a video game ever, which was for Breath of the Wild. So taking all of that into consideration, what does that suggest for the beginning of 2021? Well, from one angle, you could potentially argue that because 2021 is likely to see some bigger releases, that some of the development teams that made games for 2017 are potentially ready to release games in 2021, and because there's some rumors about a Switch revision or two, perhaps Nintendo will have some sort of major presentation or direct that will be similar to the uber hype presentation we had to start off 2017 to tell us everything about the Nintendo Switch. I think you can kind of make that argument. I've thought about it before for sure, but at the same time, that was to start off the entire generation for the Nintendo Switch. Even if we get a Switch Pro, even if we see Super Mario Odyssey 2 and Breath of the Wild 2, and something else huge like a Pokemon remake, for example, all those things would be amazing, but I still don't feel like Nintendo would hold this entire massive presentation to reveal everything. In actuality, when you look at all the different directs we've seen over the years, save for that Switch presentation, most of the directs were focused on things that were coming in the near future. Occasionally they had some awesome surprises. For example, in the March Nintendo Direct for 2018, they revealed Super Smash Bros. Ultimate was coming out for the big holiday game for that year. But overall, most of the directs were meant to share information about games coming within the next 3 to 6 months. That's basically how it's been. But based off what we know so far for 2021, we know that in February, Nintendo is publishing both Bravely Default 2 and 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. And then in March, we know we are getting a major third-party release, an exclusive Monster Hunter Rise, and Nintendo's definitely helping to market that game. They're definitely pushing that game. And beyond that, there's some other pretty big third-party games, but we don't have a specific release date for most of them. But the point I'm making here is that at least for February and March, you could argue that Nintendo's basically covered. They are not in a rush to put out a Nintendo Direct or Direct Mini or Partner Showcase to share information about games coming for January, February, and March. We're pretty much covered. There may be a few more things we may see from Nintendo, but they don't actually need to give us a Direct so soon. But obviously that kind of comes down to what Nintendo's strategy is for 2021. For example, if a Switch revision is coming out in early 2021, they're probably going to want to reveal it sooner or later. I think January is the first month where we could see a reveal for that. Now that holidays have passed, Nintendo will not be hurting their holiday sales by announcing a Switch Pro. They could do that in January, but they may wait a little bit longer. I personally have been thinking that a March release for a Switch revision to come out alongside Monster Hunter Rise and maybe something else like a Zelda Skyward Sword HD would be a really good idea, and it kind of matches up to Nintendo strategies in the past with how they've released different revisions and have had both some sort of Zelda remaster or something along those lines and some big third-party game. But because of the pandemic and just because, well, Nintendo may have something different in mind, it may not happen then, it may be later in the year. But if Nintendo is planning something like this, they're gonna want to announce these things sooner or later. I mentioned potentially a Skyward Sword HD for March. I do think there's a chance something like that could happen. Which sort of brings me to one potential thing we may be seeing sooner than later, and that's Zelda. Zelda's anniversary is actually in February. It's going to be Zelda's 35th anniversary. And as I said multiple times already, we saw a lot of merchandising and trademarking for Mario's 35th anniversary well beforehand, and then a year later, we saw something similar for Zelda, implying that the same way Nintendo had some 35th anniversary plans for Mario, they may be thinking something similar, planning something similar for Zelda as well. And Zelda's anniversary isn't too far from now. And since we're talking about Zelda's anniversary, we have to talk about Breath of the Wild too. They started development for this game back in 2017. You gotta think that by 2021, Nintendo's gonna have something to show off. Sure, they gave us that story teaser trailer back at E3 2019, but we haven't gotten anything since. Now I'm paraphrasing here, but when we got the reveal for Age of Calamity, it came in a 6-minute or so video that included the Age of Calamity trailer, but also it started off with AJ Numa, the Zelda director, talking about how they'll be talking about Breath of the Wild 2 soon. But what is soon? It wasn't at the Game Awards, but maybe soon would mean perhaps something close to Zelda's anniversary. I really feel like Nintendo will talk about Breath of the Wild 2 by Zelda's anniversary this February. That is my belief, that is my prediction, so that's what I'm going with. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. It is a prediction. You have to take all of these things with a grain of salt. We don't know what Nintendo will announce when they announce it, but I do think it makes sense to start talking about Zelda fairly soon. And because there's reason to believe that Nintendo will be celebrating Zelda's 35th anniversary in a similar way to Mario, I'm thinking there's going to be more than one Zelda release for the year, which is why I've also brought up Skyward Sword HD. We've seen AJ Onuma tease that before in the past. We've even seen some retail listings over the last few months. I think this all could be the smoke of the fire that would be a Skyward Sword HD release, and I'm thinking that release could be this March. If that is the case, they're going to have to reveal that fairly soon. They don't have to reveal it too soon though. Keep in mind, for 3D All-Stars, the big game everyone was excited about that was rumored all throughout 2020, wasn't revealed until just a few weeks before it came out. So Nintendo can wait as long as they really need to for things like this. When it comes to some sort of remaster or compilation pack that's already a known quantity, I feel like Nintendo can easily get away with announcing it with very little notice. Meaning, we could go throughout all of January, wait until February to get a Zelda Anniversary Direct just for them to announce that Skyward Sword HD is coming out in March. They could potentially do that. I think that actually makes some decent sense. But on the note of February, there's something else I'm sort of expecting to see, and that's Pokemon. It's Pokemon's 25th anniversary. They surely have some plans. They have plans every year. There's a Pokemon presentation or two throughout the year, every single year. Pokemon is very celebratory of its anniversaries and different years and generations, so there's no way in my mind I think they're going to be skipping out on their 25th anniversary. In fact, during the Thanksgiving parade, we actually saw the Pokemon 25th anniversary logo. So to put it simply, I'm like 99.92% sure that Pokemon Company will be talking about Pokemon and new Pokemon games and releases in either January or February. Now I say January because in the past we've seen Pokemon Directs come in January, but sometimes they also happen in February for Pokemon Day. There's a lot of speculation that we could be seeing Pearl and Diamond remakes. Maybe that's happening. They also need to talk about new Pokemon Snap, potentially Detective Pikachu, and a few other things like Pokemon Unite. So there's a few different Pokemon products that seem likely to be coming out in 2021 that they need to talk about. And unlike all other Nintendo franchises, Pokemon Company isn't entirely owned by Nintendo. They operate on their own, and they pretty much always have their own dedicated presentations where they talk about their Pokemon games. So regardless if Nintendo has some sort of direct mini or major direct in the early part of 2021, there's going to be some sort of presentation for Pokemon. They've been pretty consistent about that, and I expect it. The question is, will it happen in January, or will it happen in February? We'll have to wait and see. But going back to the possibility of us seeing a general Nintendo Direct or a Direct Mini. While Nintendo can wait a few more months before they start outlining things to come out later on to the year, there is a deadline to this, because we don't really know what's happening in April. So I gotta think that at the latest, we'll be seeing at least a Nintendo Direct Mini by March. But I also think that at some point this year, we will be seeing the return of the general Nintendo Direct. So we may see something bigger than a Direct Mini by March. It could be a general Nintendo Direct. Before we close things out here, there's one more angle I want to consider. So there were a lot of rumors for a 2D Metroid to come out in 2020. That did not happen. But the pandemic did occur, and it's known that many games were delayed. It's widely speculated that several Nintendo games, or at least a few of them, were pushed into 2021. Perhaps one of them was a 2D Metroid. Maybe we would have seen that in 2020. So if that's the case, perhaps we have a Metroid game coming out in the first half of 2021. If so, Nintendo has to announce it relatively soon, perhaps by as late as this March, or maybe hopefully sooner. But what also makes this a little interesting is that there's also a lot of speculation right now that Samus could be added to Fortnite. You see, in Fortnite right now, there's this huge crossover event occurring for Season 5 that's about bringing different hunters from different universes. We saw Master Chief added from Halo, and we also saw Kratos from God of War added as well. Two huge characters for both Microsoft and Sony. But what's interesting about this is that both God of War and Halo are having big new games coming out in 2021. This is clearly marketing here. Fortnite is like Smash Brothers. It is used for marketing. Perhaps it's even more marketing because it's more widespread, more mainstream, it's across all platforms, and it's free. So whatever property is added to Fortnite, it gets a lot of exposure. And you want to know what needs a lot of exposure right now? Metroid. If Nintendo has plans for Metroid, it would probably be a good idea to market the couple Metroid games that could be coming out this year, like a 2D Metroid, maybe Prime Trilogy. And a lot of this marketing could start off with Samus being added to Fortnite. If this were to occur, I would assume that some sort of Metroid game announcement would happen around the same time, meaning that I think that if we do get the Samus and Fortnite thing, it's going to happen alongside some sort of Metroid announcement, be it Prime Trilogy or 2D Metroid, in a Nintendo Direct or Direct Mini. And because Season 5 expires or ends by March, I think it would have to happen by March. So to summarize my thoughts here, we may not get anything in January. I'm hoping we do, but we don't have to. Nintendo could wait until February before we start seeing some really cool things. There's Zelda's anniversary, there's Pokemon's anniversary. At the very least, I think we are for sure seeing Pokemon, and I also think Zelda is really likely. I also think there's a decent reason to think that we are getting some sort of Metroid announcement soon. I think that could come in some sort of Nintendo Direct Mini or Nintendo Direct, and I think the latest we could see that is this March. But also by March, we will have seen the release for Monster Hunter Rise, 3D World, and Bravely Default 2. We don't know much else that's from Nintendo, or at least a big game that's coming to the Nintendo Switch, in terms of having a specific release date beyond that point. So Nintendo will have to have some sort of direct by the end of March, I think. And it doesn't have to happen in March, they can do it sooner. Maybe at some point, they will want to announce things more than 2 weeks in advance. And with all the different things Nintendo could be talking about, some of these things may not be in a game-specific or anniversary-specific direct. Maybe we do get a Zelda anniversary direct, or maybe they put it all in some sort of general Nintendo direct where it's a Zelda-focused direct, but it also includes other announcements that outlines things that are coming out throughout the year, or at least the first half of the year, like April, May, and June. Now, to be clear, if we do get something like this, I'm not saying Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out early in the year. At this point, I'm thinking it's closer to a holiday release, but that doesn't mean they can't talk about some big things that are coming later in the year, but still focus on a lot of smaller things that are coming out for the first half of the year. And when you factor in a potential reveal for a Switch revision sooner than later, I'm fairly certain we're going to be getting some pretty cool Nintendo news not too long from now. It's possible Nintendo may make us wait a little bit longer, and we won't get anything too exciting in January, but by February for sure, the Nintendo announcements will start rolling in. I have my fingers crossed for something nice in January, but point is, by February things will be getting really good, and the longest we'll have to wait to get information about games coming out for April and beyond, in my opinion, is this March. So we're really not too far off from some really cool Nintendo announcements for 2021. But what do you guys think? What sort of announcements or directs do you think we'll be seeing throughout the beginning of 2021? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.